Welcome to the In Between podcast. Today I am chatting with Alexa Ryan, a neurotherapist, naturopath, nutritionist, and founder of It Comes Naturally, where she provides supplements to restore gut, brain, and immune health, while also providing wellness events and retreats. Welcome, Alexa.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. I love health and wellness. For me personally, I also own a business, and I think it's easily the foundation of everything I do in my business, because if I don't get movement in, if I'm not eating, like literally before this, I had a meeting. I'm like, okay, I need to get snacks. Like the brain needs to keep moving, right? And so I would love for you to share a bit about your journey and what led you to becoming so passionate about health and wellness.
Sure. I think the root of it really did start way before I knew that's where I would end up professionally. I struggled with a lot of health ailments as a young athletic child. So I say that because so often you are an individual that like looks healthy and appears healthy and you don't have anything like majorly wrong with you, but you know innately something's off, right? Like sometimes I'm in the zone when I'm in school, or I was a dancer and then became a professional dancer later in life. And same thing, like I'd be performing and being like, wow, that one was like so good. I was so on. And then other times I'd be like, I can't find anything that I need physically, mentally. And so that inconsistency was always kind of looming in my life. And ultimately I struggled with severe like skin irritations and rashes, digestive flare-ups that just would come and go and were so aggressive, and my parents just like couldn't figure it out. I then started suffering from debilitating migraines where I would lose vision in one eye and get like very ill and would sleep for hours. You know, I wouldn't be able to go to school. So, but outside of that, you know, my parents were kind of just doing the traditional medicine assessment and nothing was coming up and helping me. So I think through those struggles, eventually finding what a lot of those root causes were for me and clearing them from my own body helped me realize, wow, this was life-changing for me. I'd love to help others do the same thing because it's not common knowledge. A lot of these things aren't talked about, and being able to help people kind of clear those issues if they have them just really became my number one priority.
Absolutely. So with all of those symptoms, did you start more with a like conventional medicine approach and then you went holistic, or did you jump in right to the holistic side?
Well, as a young adult, and then even before that, a teenager, when I was kind of like still under my parents' care, so that would be like pre-college, we went that route because it's kind of all my parents knew and nothing worked. It didn't make a difference, right? And so that's where I, at a very early age, kind of lost I don't want to say the trust in that. I think there's a place for that Western or conventional medicine in an acute setting, but it's not healthcare. It's not long-term care. And so from a very early age, I was like, oh, this doesn't work for what we're looking to do. So I think that's where my story is a little unique in that, you know, sometimes people have to wait until they get very ill or they're older and they're like, oh, this system wasn't working for me and it wasn't built to sustain or support a truly healthy lifestyle. So I found holistic medicine early on, happened to kind of place my career in that space. And then it was just all that for me immediately. Yeah.
Do you remember maybe a moment where you tried something or had a conversation holistically and it just clicked and you were like, wait, this could actually work. Like I could find relief?
I did. I think the very first moment for me that just completely changed my life was food intolerance testing. And that was really some of my biggest culprits when it came to my health issues. But again, no one as a young person had said, hey, you should look into that. It wasn't a thing. And so once I finally found that and realized, oh my God, this is life-changing. Like my brain fog went away, my migraines went away, my digestive issues went away, the skin issues went away, just simply by cleaning up my diet and tailoring my food specifically to my microbiome, right? And we're talking, this is well over 15 years ago at this point. And now, you know, all we hear about is microbiome and like digestive support and all those things that like build your healthy lifestyle. So that is the moment for me where it completely changed my life. And I said, well, if I can do that with food, and that's just the basics of like taking bad foods out for me, bad foods for me, not everyone, and then replacing them with foods that help and work with my body. Imagine what I can do if I clean up like my entire life, right? And like we completely rebuild the health system for individuals. So yeah, that was the beginning for me.
I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, there's a trend going around calling it the sick care system and all of
Yeah.
that, but it's interesting that, when you bring these, what are really just symptoms to doctors, you immediately they're searching for a diagnosis or a disease or something to label and slap it on you and be like, oh, you have this. And it's like a lot of times, like you're saying, it's not necessarily an illness or a disease. It's something that can be treated, but we just are taught to like, this is the disease, the illness you have. Here's what we need to do to treat it. And it's
Exactly.
interesting that something as simple, well, it sounds simple. Obviously, it's not for the regular American,
Right.
as switching your food and what type you're eating and how you're eating it. And like all of those things could actually remove rashes, take away headaches, like all these symptoms that you were experiencing.
Absolutely. And I think you hit a really key point that I now have to integrate into my practice so that people understand that it is true medicine, in
Mm-hmm.
that symptoms, when you go a certain route through the healthcare system, symptoms are just treated with, you have these symptoms, so here is a drug to mask those symptoms, instead of realizing that your body is producing those symptoms because that is how it communicates to you to tell you there is something wrong. And if
I
you
love
don't
that.
listen, you're going to miss the message, and you continue to ignore that for a time period, and that is how you end up with chronic disease or illness. And ultimately that can be avoided with appropriate and preventative, true, like, wellness, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I think we have to kind of change the way we wrap our mind around those symptoms. They're showing for a reason, and we need to listen to them so that we can truly heal them rather than just cover them up.
If someone's listening and, maybe they're currently using conventional approaches and they've yet to find someone to have the holistic approach, what advice would you give them in that transition? Because the other topic I want to have here is that, like, there are people who claim to be holistic, to be a coach, and don't have the certifications, the knowledge that someone like yourself has. So, how do you go about finding someone and transitioning safely in a way that you can feel confident that you're going to get the help that you need?
Sure. I think, especially in our very social media driven age, it is hard to kind of break through some of that noise and find like a really solid individual that can truly treat and help you heal. So I think some of the first things you should look for are particular certifications depending on the individual that you're wanting to work with. I think naturopathic doctors are a great alternative if you're looking for what an MD would provide you, but outside of the conventional or Western space. They are a one-to-one. They just look at the body in a holistic way. So I think naturopathic practitioners or integrative health practitioners are both some of that top tier level when it comes to the training, the schooling, and everything they've had, and a really great grasp on treating the entire body. And then I think kind of outside of that, I think some of my favorite types of practitioners are acupuncturists. I think obviously dietitians and those that specialize in gut health. So if you have, master's degrees in dietetics, nutrition, anything like that, those are excellent sources to go to as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, is really taking the time to look at the certifications and not just listen to someone on social media as
Right.
much as like people can be convincing, right? Like take the time to go to their websites, take the time to have an initial call and ask those questions. I think a lot of times we get nervous and we're like, oh, well, this is, the white coat theory. Like I'm scared to ask those things, but it is so important because it's your health we're talking about, right? And like
Absolutely.
that's everything that we have.
It's true. It's really all that we have. I mean, this body is the one we get, and so we should be treating it better than anything else in the world, because the better we treat this, the better our life will be. It's a one-to-one reflection of what that looks like for us.
Absolutely. If someone is feeling overwhelmed by the conversation of their health, maybe this is someone who hasn't gone to the doctor in a couple of years, they know that those symptoms that you're discussing are prevalent. What is that first step that they should take? Should they go to the doctor? Should they go for a walk? Like, what is that overwhelm and how can we calm it down but take those small steps to be healthier?
Sure. I think the overwhelm is very normal to feel when maybe you have a lot and you're not really sure where to start. I think, sure, those immediate things like, yeah, go to yoga, take a walk, kind of just reset so that you realize that it isn't something that you can't fix. And I think maybe that's like a good general approach to it, is that everything can be reversed. I think that's another idea in wellness that we should really kind of embrace, in that we've realized the brain and neuroplasticity can be rebuilt and strengthened in a way that we never thought was possible before. The body can do the same thing. And so having a little trust in that your body knows how to heal, it just has to be given the proper tools. And then I think, like you said, make that initial consult. It typically will cost you nothing to have a free consult with a practitioner and be able to just ask those questions, or at least get a feel for the individual to make sure it's a good match. And then from there, decide if you're ready to tackle the changes that you are going to have to make to better your life, but they will be the best choices you make to feel better.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that taking an inventory, honestly, like we do with our business sometimes, of like, what are those symptoms, and writing them down. Because I just recently, well, it's been almost a year, I've been working with an integrative doctor, and I noticed one symptom that I was experiencing in regards to my hormonal balance. And we'd been working on it for a year, and I noticed one symptom, and I sat down, I was like, okay, I'm just going to write a list before my next appointment. Turns out like a lot of those symptoms had come back.
Yeah.
The blood work had reflected that. So she was like, I already thought you were going to say these things. But I think oftentimes we don't sit down before those appointments and like really think of like, okay, how have I been feeling? How have I been showing up in business, in our daily life, energy levels, all of those things. And I think having that time to like reflect before you have the conversation, because it's true, like there is such a thing as a white coat. Like sometimes our brains just turn to mush. We're like, this person's important. Like they know everything. I'm just going to let them lead. But it's like, even though you're looking at that blood work, you're the one in the body. So have the confidence to say what you're feeling.
Agreed. I think advocacy for yourself is the most important when it comes to your wellness and being able to take control of that. I know, speaking from both versions, right? In my younger years, being that individual, being told, you're fine, you're young, you're healthy, there's nothing wrong with you. And then realizing every day, I feel like there's something wrong with me, and I'm wanting to trust that, but being told by this professional that it's maybe not as severe as I feel. And so diminishing that, I think, for an individual kind of crushes the healing process in its own way. And then now on the flip side, being a practitioner, that's one of the first things I tell somebody is lay it all out for me. Don't hide it. I want to know about your poop. I want to know about the weird things. I want to know about what you're thinking. Like, it's all okay. And we should feel more comfortable talking about that. So it's usually one of my first goals when I sit down with somebody to be like, hi, I'm human, you're human. Let's connect and just like get you to a place where you feel better. Because this isn't a game about like someone knows more than you and you should feel silly in that seat. It makes no sense to me.
Yes, absolutely. And just making people feel comfortable in that.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to kind of transition a little bit of the conversation to your practice, to what you do on a daily basis and how you help people. And then obviously your supplements, your retreats, all of these different aspects. So would you give us some context of like how you decided to make the decision and work for yourself?
Sure. I think I always knew I wanted to. I come from a family of entrepreneurs and business owners in every aspect, no one in the field that I'm in, but I knew that I wanted to be in the sciences. That was always just kind of where I gravitated. And so once I was able to practice and work on my own, I joined a really cool group of a bunch of individual practitioners that we all had offices within one like 4-wall space. And so it was a really great opportunity to kind of get my feet wet and test like the individual ownership as a business owner, but still feel supported. You know, we had like a front office staff that helped all of us. We had a joint waiting room. We ended up sharing a patient base because maybe someone who was getting acupuncture needed a brain map and neurotherapy, or needed blood work done for food intolerance testing. So it kind of helped me feel confident in working on my own. And after being there for a few years, I decided, I'm going to change up a little bit of what I do. I leaned a little bit more into the neuroscience component of my work. And I went like out on my own, and I became the traveling neurotherapist. And I worked with the NFL. I worked with professional athletes all over the country because I kind of thought peak performance at the time was just my main interest. And so I did that for a while, and it was awesome. It was very cool. And then I decided, okay, as great as this is, can I blend it all together? And that's where kind of this more integrative practice approach came, where anyone who comes through my, virtual door, we'll say, because I'm still concierge, I travel to see most of my patients. We're doing some version of QEEG assessment on their brain, some sort of neurofeedback to help improve performance and, neuroplasticity. We're usually doing some sort of gut rebalancing protocol because the brain and the gut are one and connected. And from there, any other little ancillary piece that might fit into their more specific tailored needs. And I just realized I could serve people better in that format. And then outside of that, I thought, okay, I'm telling people, hi, you need these supplements to rebuild your gut. You need these supplements to support your brain. These dietary changes need to be made. Why not make a product and then a line of products that can help people so that they have a trusted source, not just me, but products that I can stand behind and say, hi, this was designed for exactly what I'm going to have you do. So rather than piecemeal your supplements and vitamin routine, here's a trusted line that you can have and use. And that was really lacking at the time when I started it. And so that's kind of how It Comes Naturally was born. It became the products that help support my practice and what I wanted to have people use.
That's incredible. I think you're so right. It is so hard to find reliable supplements. And I know even for my practitioner, like she has a website, but it's all the different brands that she approves, right? Mm-hmm. So as a business owner, it makes total sense to go in and have it kick back to you. What was the most difficult part of deciding to start a supplement company? Was it the fact that the ingredients can be bad? Was it searching for the right people to help you? What was your struggle within that?
Yeah, I think the biggest struggle was finding a manufacturer that met the standards that I wanted to have the product meet. I think making sure it was made in the United States was very important to me, making sure that the ingredients I was able to stand behind and source what I wanted, right? Because you ultimately need the manufacturer to make your formula if you're the one formulating it. And that is something that a lot of people don't know, is a lot of supplements that you find on the shelves are just white labeled generic supplements that an individual has gone in to a manufacturer and said, I will just put my name on that label. And it was very important for me to not do that. And so the biggest hurdle was finding a manufacturer who was saying, okay, we can start from the ground up. We are here to just be your ingredient source. You pull and formulate what you want. You tell us what that looks like, and we will help you make it happen. And so once I found that group, it was easy breezy. But leading up to it, it was definitely a lot of time on the phone, a lot of interviewing, and realizing that hard pill to swallow that there is a lot of scam and fraud in the supplement and vitamin industry. And I wanted to do what I could to stop that, at least for my products.
Yeah, the transparency is just not there for these companies. And unfortunately, it is all marketing. And so if they've got a big marketing budget, they can probably sell you what they want to sell you.
Oh, yeah. You see it on Instagram every day, right? These ads of products that come out of nowhere, have a huge following, but it's because the marketing budget was there to make it sell.
Yeah. What was the first product that you're like, this is number one, every client I see needs it? What was that?
So we're actually going through a rebranding currently as to what we're going to call it. So it's been known as Pure Blooms. It is an all-in-one foundational nutritional supplement. So essentially every multivitamin, digestive support, and gut rebalancing, brain food, anti-inflammatories, everything all in one, plus a plant-based protein in this one powder. So you could essentially get over 30 to 35 nutrients that you would need every day in 2 scoops. And so simplifying someone's routine, because again, that can be very overwhelming to say, nutritionally, I need so much, but now I'm taking 10 pills, 4 powders, 6 times a day.
It's expensive.
It is. It's expensive. It's overwhelming and confusing for some. So our foundational product was the nutritional support powder that covered all the bases. And then I also designed a program that went with it that if you use the powder in a particular way while changing your diet, you could use it as a functional medicine detox to reset your gut and your entire body.
Wow. That's incredible. How do you take it? Is it smoothie? Do you just put it in water?
Typically you can, I make mine in a smoothie every day just because I'm a smoothie girl, but you can mix it into, coconut milk, water, whatever you prefer, shake it up, blend it. And it covers all the things you would need. Plus, the protein helps make it a sustainable meal if you do a smoothie or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's so innovative to have something that kind of covers all the basis, because a lot of times you get people who are taking all 17 of whatever they're taking and they don't even know why they're taking it. And it's like, yeah, maybe some of those are maybe something like vitamin D that tend to be low. But if you're also not doing the blood work and if you're not checking on those numbers, then you might not need to be taking all of those. And to have something that's really the foundation, and then you can go and get the blood work and be like, okay, here are the things that I actually need to focus on, but I have that foundation built.
Exactly. And you said it perfectly. The foundation is essential, and it is almost always the main root cause for all the other ailments, disease, and illnesses that come down the line. So if your hormones are imbalanced, yes, you need to look at your thyroid. Yes, you need to look at estradiol. Yes, you need to look at all these other levels, but that is so far up the pipe. We need to dial it back. How did we get to that point where the thyroid became sluggish, where everything started to kind of fall apart? It was the lack of the foundational nutrition you had for however many years up until the issues started showing themselves, right? Those symptoms that are calling out to you. If you had taken care of this, we may not have gotten to the point now of hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's or whatever it might be. And that applies to all illness, not just hormone imbalance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something I've been trying to work on myself. And then you get to that point and you're like, oh man, I did a lot of damage and now I'm trying to reverse everything.
Exactly. And that's so real for every person, even those that like are trying to be the most diligent all the time, because we are human and we're trying to live, and our world is not the most conducive to be, a pure vessel. But
I think another point too is a conversation I had with my integrative medicine doctor is about trauma. There was a time in college where I experienced a heavy amount of trauma for about 2 or 3 years. And normally in doctors' offices, I wouldn't even bring that up. It must have been therapy, right? And she's like, hey, well, what actually happened in your life during this time? And what she discovered is like, okay, well, you were having so much up and down trauma. I could predict your cortisol was done. Like all these different things. She's like, and now we're 5-8 years out of it. Your body is finally just trying to figure out how to come down. And you were stuck so high for so long, out of your control, right? Like it wasn't something I was trying to do to myself. We have to rebalance it. And I loved when she gave that perspective, because at first, not that she was shaming me, but I'm like, man, like I'm 29. I was not a kid who drank or smoked. Like I did nothing bad. I really tried to do my best to stay healthy. How did I get to this place?
Sure.
And it's very helpful for her to have brought in that conversation of trauma and been like, hey, it still might not be your fault.
Right. And again, with what I do, piecing both the mental and the brain health with the rest of the body, because they're so often treated as separate entities. And in reality, they control each other and need each other to be balanced. So oftentimes stress and emotional, just whether it's trauma or not, just emotional stress impacts the body so much more than we're even willing to acknowledge. And then you sit back sometimes and it's like, well, how did I get here? How did this happen? And it's so often here that impacted everything else downstream that if it isn't addressed, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. So I'm proud of the practitioner that you've been seeing to be able to look at you and say, hey, this is a huge piece of this puzzle and it needs to be looked at before we can tackle anything else that's lacking. And so it's nice that you've been able to have that experience.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not something I've experienced before. So it's great that I'm able to experience it now. I would love to discuss, given that you are so connected with both the brain and the gut, how mental health is a part of this conversation, because I know it's very trendy on socials and stuff to talk about, anxiety, depression, all these things are your gut health. Like it's part of your brain, but it's your gut health. And I would love to hear from you. What is that connection? Is it to blame on one part of our body? Is it a whole problem? And then I would love to hear, your view on medication. I know obviously it has a time and a place, and in no way shaming if someone's on it, but what your perspective is when you're dealing with a client that's struggling with these things.
Sure. I think we can start with the medication piece and then work backwards.
Yeah.
Because I always use the phrase a top-down approach or a Band-Aid approach. And unfortunately, drug-based intervention or medication, no shame in anyone utilizing it, but it ultimately will further the imbalance that you're experiencing because we aren't ever addressing the root cause of how or why we got there. So I think, yes, time and place, maybe a temporary bridge to get us over a time period, and then work to kind of titrate off of what those drugs might be and utilize something that's more healing, which is the neurotherapy component of what I do. But then, even then, let's say I have a patient that comes to me and they've either been the drug route and it didn't work out for them, or they're looking to get off of it, and we start a neurotherapy protocol for them. We are always going to work on the gut. And that is because your neurotransmitters, your immune system, everything sits within the lining of your gut. And I know that's a weird visual for a lot of people to kind of assume, because like you mentioned online, we just hear like, oh, your brain, your gut and your brain, it's an axis. Well, what does that mean? And it is literally I'm going to create kind of a picture here, but like your gut is tightly woven together in an ideal world. If you have a really healthy gut lining, over time with stress, emotions, bad food, toxins, it becomes permeable and has holes in it. We hear that as leaky gut. That's the buzzword online. Leaky gut is very real. It does mean that you have perforations or breakages in the lining of your gut. And what that does is it causes gap for toxins to come in and out, for your neurotransmitter production to be off, because those neurotransmitters are created down here before they're sent to your brain. So as gut health diminishes, so does mental health. And what a weird little kind of catch 22 is that it's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario. Is if the gut is unhealthy first, obviously neurotransmitter production and immunity is off, and therefore it creates kind of the upstream version of now my mental health is off. It can happen in reverse though as well. Let's say your gut is healthy and intact. I have severe trauma, an emotional event, chronic stress and fatigue that has ultimately created too much stress now on my body because it's come from my mind and is impacting my physical state. That will then cause leaky gut and distress. So it's a 1 to 2 back and forth. Chicken or the egg, we don't know always the scenario until we get in there with somebody and talk to them and kind of figure it out. But it ultimately doesn't matter which one was first. It's that they are a symbiotic relationship. And so to take care of one is to take care of the other. And the journey is always, or should always be, that we treat them side by side so that you can ultimately find more balance.
Can we talk on the neurotherapy side of this for a second too? I would love for you to go into more of what it is. And in this example, since we're already talking about mental health, how you would utilize it for someone to maybe either come off medication or instead of medication too. And I know there's all the other things you do within that.
Sure. So with the neuro aspect of what I do, we always start with a brain map or a quantitative EEG. So it is a diagnostic assessment of brain activity. So we're able to identify exactly on the brain, pinpointing areas that may be misfiring or they've become sluggish and are now too low in the frequencies that they're producing. There might be other areas that are too high in the amount of frequency that they're producing. And over time, that imbalance is what contributes to brain fog, anxiety, depression, maybe chronic stress and traumatic type events can impact that as well. ADHD in children, autism spectrum disorder, the list goes on. We can even get out of the clinical aspect and just go to peak performance. Hey, I'm just a really high strung, stressed individual because I live in our very modern Western world. I don't sleep. I don't, all the things we've all heard. And so having that diagnostic helps me see where on the brain these issues are happening.
From there, is that something, something that you're having them do as far as, is it a scan? How does it work?
Sure.
Structurally, I guess.
Yeah. I have to paint that picture. I forget sometimes. I jump over that because I'm so used to it. I don't know if most people have had an EEG of any kind, but essentially it is placing sensors on the head. It kind of looks like a swim cap with white electrodes on it. Those are then connected to grounding clips on the ears. You're then plugged into a kind of computer system that allows, with the use of a highly conductive gel that we put in those sensors on the head, it allows me to see your brain activity on my computer. And from there, we're able to record that data. So in live time, we're able to not just see what your brain is doing, but capture it in an image, essentially. And so those images, after I kind of, filter through the raw data and get just the brain activity, which is what we ultimately want. It comes out very similarly to, yeah, like a PET scan almost, or something of that nature. If anyone's seen an fMRI on a brain, again, it looks similarly, where we're kind of tracking color and concentration of flow or activity on the brain. It's actually really pretty to see. It's, a range of like blues, greens, yellows, and reds on the brain. And so that data is what I use to then not just assess someone, but then be able to design a protocol for their neurofeedback or neurotherapy to actually rebalance and work on those areas of the brain that we have identified. Hey, they're not running at full speed or at their most optimal. And from there, we're able to kind of strengthen the brain to fire in a more optimal way.
And what does that look like?
Sure. So the neurofeedback or neurotherapy component, I personally use in my practice a setup that is similar to like behavioral modification therapy. I don't know if, again,
Yes.
anyone has experienced that, but you're essentially learning from feedback. Something is teaching you through a reward system that if I behave a certain way or if I produce an action, I will receive a reward. In basic psychology, it's very Pavlovian. So like the dog learned how to ring the bell because it wanted the reward of the food. And over time, it was able to learn to ring the bell even when the food reward wasn't there. So not to compare us to dogs, but I mean, the psychological theory is there and has, stood the test of time. So essentially, I like to make it entertaining for patients. So they get to come in and watch a movie, a TV show, whatever they want to watch visually. What they're watching isn't important as long as it's entertaining, and will just hold their attention. From there, they are connected to individual leads that, again, allow me to take that data and see their brain in live time. And essentially, I provide the feedback to the screen that they're watching. And that feedback is basically brightening and darkening of the screen that they're watching. So when it plays in brightness, that is me telling the brain, the ranges that you're producing are what we want. Maintain it. And if you can maintain it, you will receive the reward because the screen stays bright. And as they naturally fall back into the old ways, the bandwidths of frequency that we aren't looking for, the screen gets dark. And it's kind of this constant fluctuation or pulsing that the brain is learning, okay, when it gets dark, obviously I don't want that. My intrinsic motivation as a human is to say, I want to watch what I want to watch. So I'm going to naturally, over time, the brain will learn through that reward system how to stay in the pathways and the frequencies that we want it to neurologically and away from the old. And over time, that then becomes the only pathway it fires in. And we've now rebuilt through neuroplasticity a new train track, essentially, that the brain can operate on. And that, although it takes much more time and patience than a drug might, it is seen as a one-to-one intervention with drugs for certain diagnoses like ADHD and anxiety and depression. We are able to give people the opportunity to not have to go down that route if they don't feel like it meets their needs and have a natural alternative.
That's incredible. I've never heard of that. So that's incredible. How many sessions would you say it takes for someone with anxiety, depression, or ADHD? I'm sure it varies per person.
It does vary per person. Years of research support that a bout of treatment is 10 sessions, and usually we would recommend up to 30 sessions as like a complete, like we've really solidified the work we've done. Of course, children tend to kind of take to it very quickly, and within 10 sessions, we can make massive improvements for a school-age child. Adults, we have a little more, biases and things that kind of prevent us from making headway as simply as we can. So sometimes we need to use that 30 to 35 session round for adults just to really lock it in. But that's
Do they notice improvements after 10 or before that?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, some of the first things that we see improve are quality of sleep within that first 10 sessions, kind of this sense of calm that people have a hard time pinpointing exactly what that is, but they just feel at ease. That stress has come down, and what people now, again, with these buzzwords online are learning is their vagus nerve, right? They're realizing that they are toned and they are in a more calm state rather than having that kind of adrenal cortisol kick up. That nervous system has regulated a bit. So yeah, overall improvement of mood, sleep, and kind of a general sense of relaxation.
Wow. What a great alternative to really anything to do with drugs or other ways of just being able to heal yourself in a more natural way. And I'm so grateful that there are those options now, right? Like, I feel like even 10 years ago, there may have been these options, but they weren't talked about. And so I think the more that we're able to talk about them and make them just another option, right? Like, I think still it's very much like, oh, you should go get on medicine. Oh, you got to go straight to therapy. And those have times and places, but there's also other discussions that can be had before you make a decision.
Absolutely. And finding the option that is best for you. And sometimes it's a combination of the two. Sometimes it's one, sometimes the other. But like you said, at least knowing that the option exists for people and acknowledging that it works and that it is there for those that want to utilize it. Let's let that be, right?
Yeah. I would love to hear from you as someone who prioritizes, I assume, your health and wellness, and you're a business owner, you're busy. How do you personally structure your day to stay, air quote, balanced? I know we can't all achieve balance, but as someone who prioritizes her health, and obviously you are a walking billboard for the work that you do, right? So the healthier you are, the more energetic you look, the more people are like, wow, actually, I want to feel that way too. So how on a daily basis does your day work to prioritize those things in your health and wellness?
Sure, absolutely. I think my routine currently, as someone who has tendencies to run stressed, has tendencies to be an overachiever and, feel like I need to be doing as much as I can. I have learned that finding the balance of, from the minute I wake up in the morning, I don't immediately get on my phone to eliminate any stimulation to my brain that is not natural, because the phone is not. So I think it's very important to start your day with limited exposure to kind of overstimulating dopamine and anything on your phone, including the blue light. So then after I, have my morning routine of kind of my weird wellness things. So right now we're doing olive oil and lemon shots in the morning. I usually like to follow that with like a green juice, typically celery. And then I will make my It Comes Naturally smoothie. So usually that's, frozen berries, avocado, coconut water, and the powder. And then from there, my afternoon goes into work, which I think, again, keeping that balance is staying focused on important things and trying to eliminate distractions. I think the phone is, again, the biggest culprit of that. So I really try to keep that as tight as possible. Like, if I don't have to be on my phone, then I'm not. And from there, the rest of my day, just prioritizing movement, even if it's just a walk. I feel like being in tune with your body, sometimes people are very good at that, and then others might need some time to learn. As someone who is hyper aware of everything my body has done since the day I got to this planet, I am very kind of tuned into what I need and when I need it. And sometimes that is just a walk and that's all I can handle. And other times I'm ready to take on a major weightlifting class, and that feels great. And so I think one of my favorite wellness priorities is to listen to your body and what it wants. Don't have the same expectation, especially as a woman. We change every single day throughout the month because we are designed to be different every single day of the month. And so to assume that your routine should be exactly the same, I think is a disservice to yourself. So I will round out my routine in that I am changing what I'm doing every day as long as the foundation is the same. I'm always supporting my immune system. I'm always supporting my gut, and I'm always supporting my brain. From there, every version of that might be different each day that I wake up, but those are always consistent.
I love that you said that those are your foundations, because I think sometimes people think my foundations are running. My foundations are 150 grams of protein a day, right? And maybe you have a time and place for that. Maybe you're training for something, whatever it is. But your foundations really shouldn't be those things. It should be the gut. It should be, even something as simple as making sure you eat throughout the day, right? Maybe you're someone who doesn't run hungry, or making sure you drink the water. And if you can have foundations like you just said, it broadens what you can do, and it allows you, and it gives you that permission of like, okay, if my foundation's movement, it's not specified to one form.
Right.
However I show up that day, however I feel, I can move into that, and it's going to help my gut. It's going to help my mental health. It's going to help me have energy. And so I think that's a really great way to look at things, is more of a broad sense of what your foundation should be.
Absolutely.
Well, I commend you for all the work that you do because I think it's very difficult. I'm not a science girl, but also health and wellness in this country is so difficult and so hard. And I'm sure the things that you've seen don't even scratch the surface of the conversation we've had today because it is very difficult and we've gotten ourselves into something so deep. And it's important that for me, I keep having these conversations with people because I want other people to understand that you can take a stand to be healthier and feel better. And like life is meant to be lived, but I think it's meant to be lived well and it's meant to be experienced well. And so much of our current culture is people who are just not experiencing life well. And that's so sad to me. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. It truly is my pleasure. It really is an honor each day to be able to help people discover exactly that there is so much more to life if you do it well, and that being ill and sick is not something that just happens because you're old, and it is certainly not inevitable, and you shouldn't assume that is your option. You have control over that, and yes, it takes work, and yes, it takes commitment at certain levels that might be difficult to eat an organic diet because that is important if you're able to move, if you're able to, but some version of that for everyone is attainable. And I think if you can find what those foundations are for you and commit to just that, the quality of your life will show in the long term.
Yeah, I completely agree. Health is obviously a big in between for a lot of people in our lives, right? It's something that I believe that we're taught to just not prioritize. And then all of a sudden one day we wake up and we're like, wait, I need to be looking at these things. So I love to end my podcast with the question of what advice would you give someone in the in between? And maybe in this case, we can discuss it via health and wellness.
Sure. I think as someone who tries to depict health because it is my job, it is what I do, I truly am somebody who lives by what I preach, if you will. But I was not always that individual. And it became so important at an early age for me, was kind of my first round of in between. I mentioned that when we first started talking. I had a second phase of life where an in between had me down, out, depressed, chronic pain, debilitating physical state that I thought was surely the end of me. And to now have hurdled both of those, I think the advice I would give is that there will be in-betweens in every stage of life. It is not guaranteed to only happen at one point in time, but there is always a lesson to be learned in that space, even if it is dark, even if it is heavy, even if it is true rock bottom. You will overcome it, and there is something to take away from that. And so do not be deaf or blind to what is happening in those moments, and try to realize that on the other side of that in between, even in its darkest version, there is something better, and it is an opportunity for you to grow and learn so that you can have a better opportunity on the other side.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Will you share with my audience, are you taking on new patients right now for your clinical side?
I am. Yeah, I always am.
Okay,
I think
perfect.
there's always space for virtual, and depending on their needs, we could always work them into the concierge setup as well.
Love it. And you're based out of California, right?
I am.
Okay, awesome. So I would love for you to share how they can, start having that conversation if they are interested. I know we talked a lot about the neuro side, and obviously that's something they would need you for. And then I would love for you to tell us where we could shop the supplements if we're interested in that. And we didn't even get to talk a little bit about the retreat. So maybe if you have anything coming up and you want to add that in.
Sure. Yeah. So everyone can find me on social media. I'm Alexa_Ryan. And then we have It Comes Naturally, which is at It Comes Naturally on Instagram. If you want to reach out via DM or an email, which both are there accessible, I'm always happy to do a free consultation to assess someone and let them know where they fit in and how I can help. And then, upcoming stuff. It Comes Naturally has a website, so the products can be found there. It's www.itcomesnaturally.com. And then we are going through a rebrand, like I said. So the website will very soon reflect our wellness events that we'll be hosting in Southern California, as well as other cities around the country. We're also building out for the summer, fingers crossed, a retreat that will be able to be focused on overall wellness from food, but also a mindset and kind of like rebalancing time to come spend a weekend and disconnect and reconnect with maybe new friends or old friends and establish kind of a wellness component outside of your own home and your own routine. So yeah, just the website will be kind of featuring all of that
That's
soon.
incredible. Yeah, that's awesome. Is that retreat for anyone? Like, do you have to be a part of already a wellness journey? Could you just be in the beginning? Who's it serving?
No, I think whatever phase you're in, even if you're just curious and want to know, or you're just interested in having a good time and feeling healthy for a couple days, like whatever
Yeah.
version of you wants to show up is always welcome. And we're there to just provide knowledge and a positive experience for you to feel good. And hopefully it, influences you to make changes in your day-to-day life.
I love it. I think it's so important to just kind of be around all walks of life and see where everyone is. So that's incredible. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with me today. We're going to put all of Alexa's information in the show notes and make sure that you follow at In Between Combos on Instagram. Have a great day.